one who asks has already lost. Before the first word is even spoken, before anyone has the chance to get offended or to agree, a boss never asks. He states. He never explains his decision twice. And he never, under any circumstance, chases after someone who has already decided to walk away. Chicago, the 1920s. A capo stands by the window of a laundromat that launders nothing but the syndicate's money. Word just reached him. One of his soldiers switched sides to a rival family. The capo doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't even turn from the window. He says one sentence: "Open the door for him." No anger, no pleading for him to come back. No, we'll talk about this later. The one who leaves is no longer part of the system. And that indifference, that cold "open the door," terrifies far more than any threat shouted in someone's face in front of witnesses. The code of the families was never built on shouting. It was built on a silence heavier than any weapon of argument. And at the core of that silence sits one law, simple to the point of brutality. Never ask. Never explain yourself. Never chase after anyone. Most people spend their entire lives breaking this law every single day without even noticing. They beg for attention where they should simply wait for it to arrive on its own. They justify every move they make to people who never even asked for an explanation. They chase after those who turned their backs and walked away long ago, toward an entirely different life. And every time they do this, they hand over a piece of their own territory with their own two hands. Not by force, not by threat, just by the plain fact of begging, visible from a mile away. The moment you ask for something is the moment you surrender your territory voluntarily, without a single shot fired from the other side. These actions broadcast weakness, and without a word, they pass your power straight into someone else's hands, before those hands even reached for it. The underworld only respects those who hold on to their self-respect, even when everything around them is pressing in from every direction at once. Not because it sounds good in some coach's motivational speech, but because any other behavior is an open display of weakness to anyone just waiting for the chance to use it against you. The old-timers of the commission used to tell the same parable to every new member of the family, and it always came out almost word for word. A young soldier came to an old don, complaining that a rival had taken a piece of his territory without a fight, simply by exploiting one moment of weakness. The don listened in silence, poured himself some coffee, and only then answered. He said territory never belongs to the one who screams loudest about it. It belongs to the one who can stay silent about his losses the longest while he prepares his answer. The soldier had come looking for advice on revenge. Instead, he walked away with a lesson on patience, one that turned out to be worth far more than any tactic for taking territory back. 9 laws. The commission passed them down from generation to generation without ever writing a single word on paper, because paper can be stolen, sold, shown to the enemy. Inner discipline cannot be stolen. Law number 1, the power of silent control. The law of omerta at the negotiating table. At the sit-down, at the very meeting where the fate of territory, of money, sometimes of a man's life gets decided, one simple rule holds. Whoever speaks first out of emotion loses the table before anyone has even made an offer. Not because words themselves are weak, but because emotional speech reveals the inner state of the one speaking. A shake in the voice. Words rushed out too fast. the urge to justify yourself before anyone has accused you of anything specific. A Don never rushes to answer. He lets the pause do the work for him, while everyone else trips over their own words. Silence at the negotiating table is not emptiness. It's pressure. Pressure that forces the other side to fill that silence with their own words. And often, those words give away far more than their owner would ever want when he replays that conversation alone at night. Whoever holds the silence holds the cards. Whoever speaks first lays his cards on the table before the deal is even made, and does it entirely on his own, under no pressure from anyone. Now take that same scene out of the smoke-filled back room and put it in an ordinary room, one where a promotion, a contract, or the terms of a new alliance are on the line. That same law holds just as hard, no matter which decade you're standing in. The person who breaks first under someone else's silence, who starts apologizing, arguing, negotiating with themselves out loud, loses before the first number or the first term is even said out loud. Refusing to react on impulse isn't weakness of character. It's the sharpest weapon in any room where a share of something valuable is on the line. In a world where a single word can become a verdict, silence becomes the tool that forces your opponent to face their own uncertainty, alone, with no witness but themselves. A seasoned negotiator from the commission could sit through an entire meeting, say only a handful of words, and walk out the winner, while his opponent talked 3 times as much and walked away with nothing but the feeling of having been outplayed, without ever being able to say exactly when it happened. Law number 2, the art of being unavailable, the scarcity of presence. Powerful men are never available to everyone all the time. This law rests on scarcity, the same way every valuable thing in this world rests on scarcity. If a soldier sees his capo every single day on the same corner of the same street, respect evaporates without anyone noticing, drop by drop, week after week, until there's none left at all. Familiarity kills fear, and without fear, there's no authority, no matter how loud the title on the business card. Constant availability is a form of devaluation, one you don't notice right away, but one everyone around you feels anyway. Every second spent on people who never earned your time cheapens that same second for the people who actually deserve your attention and have been waiting for it. Strategic distance isn't cruelty, and it isn't a game of playing hard to get. It's an architecture of value, built deliberately, one calculated move at a time. In every office, in every family, in every kind of relationship, the same mechanism runs, unchanged for centuries. The person who answers every message within seconds, who's always free to talk, who never makes anyone wait for a reply, slowly turns into furniture in the room. People only notice him when they need something right now, and forget him the moment after. People only start waiting for your presence once they understand it isn't guaranteed, isn't automatic, that it costs something, the way any scarce good costs something. The value of your attention is measured by exactly how much it costs someone to get even a moment of it. Scarcity doesn't mean coldness. Scarcity means selectivity. A capo doesn't ignore the whole world around him. He simply decides who his time belongs to, and he makes that decision on purpose, not out of the habit of answering everyone at the same speed. Whoever hands out his presence equally to everyone ends up meaning nothing to anyone in particular. Whoever chooses who his attention belongs to becomes desired precisely because that attention has an address, instead of being mailed out blind. Law number 3, the value of independence. Standing alone at the top. The moment a person stops needing someone else's approval or someone else's company, he becomes almost untouchable to any pressure from outside. This applies even to the closest circle, even to the people you'd call family in the ordinary sense of the word. You can trust your family for years. You can share territory with them, a cut of the profits, even your darkest secrets. But your inner foundation, the exact point you make decisions from in your hardest moments, can never depend on a single person outside yourself, no matter how close they seem. The need for approval is a form of slavery that few people ever recognize as slavery, because it doesn't wear chains around the wrists. It wears smiles, compliments, someone else's attention, someone else's quiet good job, waited for like water in a desert. And that's exactly why it's so dangerous. You can't see it, not until it starts making your decisions for you. The people who earn the deepest respect are the ones who can move forward entirely on their own, with no applause, no outside confirmation, no audience whose approval is required. The man who's willing to stand alone, who isn't afraid of solitude even at the very top of the hierarchy, terrifies his enemies far more than any show of force ever could. Because the enemy simply doesn't know how to break someone who needs nothing from him. Not one gesture, not one word of recognition. There's a difference between a loneliness that breaks a man and a loneliness that forges him. The first is born from the fear of being abandoned. The second is born from the decision that you no longer need to beg anyone to stay close. A don sitting alone at his table at the end of a long day, once everyone else has gone off to their own business, doesn't feel abandoned. He feels complete. And it's exactly that completeness, that absence of an inner hole, he needs someone else to fill, that makes him impossible to predict for anyone used to controlling people through their fear of being alone. Law number 4, controlling your reaction is controlling the room. When someone insults you, when a challenge gets thrown in your face in front of others, instinct screams, react now, prove it, defend yourself with a word or an action. But that very instinct is the trap. One that isn't always set on purpose, but that always works. The pause between the insult and the response creates uncertainty. And uncertainty is territory controlled by the one who stays quiet, not by the one who just exploded in anger in front of the whole room. The way a person reacts to a provocation decides who's actually running the situation in that exact second. A flash of anger is a handover of control into someone else's hands, even if from the outside it looks like a show of strength. A slow, measured response, on the other hand, shows an unshakability that no provocation can crack, no matter how many times it gets repeated on purpose. By controlling his own emotions, a man sets the emotional temperature of the entire room without a single wasted word. And any attempt to knock him off balance breaks against that control the way a wave breaks against a cliff that doesn't even register the impact. Anyone who's watched enough negotiations in their life knows one simple truth. The winner isn't the loudest one in the room. It's the last one to lose his composure. Picture two men in the same room after a serious insult. One turns red, raises his voice, scrambles for words to fire back instantly, desperate to prove he's right now. The other watches in silence, the way you'd study an insect under glass, in no hurry to react at all. The first burns through all his energy trying to prove strength. The second saves his, and that saved energy becomes his real weapon in a much longer game, one that outlasts a single insult thrown into an empty room where somebody simply chose not to hear it at all. Law number 5, a face that can't be read. The less a person knows about your true intentions, the more he fills in the blanks himself, using his own imagination to cover the gaps. And the more he fills in those blanks, the more he respects and fears the unknown he can't measure. Hiding your motives until the very last moment, when the move has already become unstoppable, isn't a trick for the sake of a trick. It's a form of armor, invisible to the eye, but felt by anyone who tries to break through it with a stare or a question. Showing your vulnerabilities, your plans, your real emotions, means handing others a map straight to your own weak points, drawn by your own hand. And a map of your weak points rarely gets returned to you with a thank you and an apology for using it. The absence of emotional transparency turns a person into a closed book, one everyone wants to read, but nobody can open without permission from its owner. A card player at the commissions table never shows joy when the hand is good, and never shows disappointment when it's weak. The face stays exactly the same either way, and that very steadiness throws opponents off balance far harder than any bluff ever could. People are used to reading each other's emotions like a map, navigating by someone's face the way they'd navigate by a compass. When that map comes back blank, they start drawing their own version of events. And almost every time, that version overestimates the power of the one staying silent, never the opposite. Law number 6, strategic withdrawal, creating a vacuum. Knowing when to take a step back, to disappear from view at the exact moment everyone has grown used to your presence and stopped noticing it at all, creates a sharp psychological contrast. A sudden absence creates a vacuum where things had just been familiar and predictable. And human nature can't stand emptiness. It starts filling that gap with thoughts, guesses, and anxiety it manufactures entirely on its own, with no outside help at all. The people around you start scrutinizing their own behavior, searching for the reason behind your disappearance, questioning themselves instead of questioning you. Your absence presses harder than someone's constant presence ever could, year after year. And that's the exact point where a person becomes almost impossible to replace in the eyes of those who suddenly realize how used to him they'd become, never noticing it until he was already gone from view entirely. The families understood this law so well that they used it deliberately, almost as a tool of management. A capo planning negotiations over a new cut would first disappear for a few weeks, explaining the reason to no one. When he came back, the room greeted him differently. Not because he'd changed physically, but because his absence had already done its work for him, while he was simply somewhere else, tending to his own business, never once thinking about the impression it would leave behind. Law number 7. Power doesn't explain itself. Explanations and justifications are, at their core, a confession of weakness, a disguised form of submission, a hidden search for someone else's permission for actions already taken. Every unnecessary explanation hands other people the keys to understanding your fears, your motives, your inner uncertainty. even when it's carefully hidden behind a calm tone of voice. A Don never explains why he redrew a territory line, why he cut someone out of the game without warning, why he made a certain decision in the middle of the night without asking anyone at the table for their opinion. His decisions don't need outside approval, and that's exactly why they carry so much weight with everyone around him. Weak men talk a lot, trying to convince. Strong men act, and let their actions speak with a clarity no explanation could ever match in words. Law number 8. Never chase anyone. Leave them in the emptiness. Whoever chases a traitor, chases attention, chases money, chases recognition or a seat at the table, and by chasing, automatically admits his own inferiority to whoever he's running after. If someone has decided to leave, the strongest response is to open the door for him, without a single word of reproach or a single plea for him to come back. A real underground empire isn't built on people you have to chase down every day, begging them to stay. It's built on people who choose, entirely on their own, with no pressure from outside, to be part of the system voluntarily. When the chasing stops, when your attention returns to your own growth and your own territory, the world, and along with it those very people who once walked away, start drifting back on their own, surprised at their own decision to return. The history of the syndicate remembers plenty of soldiers who tried to win back a runaway through persuasion, phone calls, promises, a chase across half the city. Not one of them ever got back what he was chasing in the shape he wanted it. Because the chase always leaves a mark of humiliation on the one doing the running, even when he manages to physically catch up with whoever he was after. Whoever stops first ends up, paradoxically, in the stronger position over the one who keeps running. Even though from the outside, it looks like running means fighting, and stopping means giving up. Law number 9, the final law. The one who needs nothing gets everything. When the inner need for outside validation disappears completely, dissolves without a trace, a person reaches a state that's nearly impossible to shake with any manipulation from outside. The one who needs nothing from others becomes a magnet, precisely because he stops being a target for anyone hunting for a weak spot in his armor. Those who chase after nothing end up, in the end, with the most of all: respect, loyalty, the voluntary submission of the very people who once dictated the terms from a position of power. When a man becomes his own source of strength, he automatically gets everything he once chased and could never catch, no matter how many years he spent running after it. This is the final stage of a boss's mindset, and it never arrives quickly. It's built over years, out of small decisions. Don't beg. Don't over-explain. Don't chase after those who leave. Each of these decisions looks small, on its own, almost invisible. But together, they build the exact same inner architecture that can never be bought, stolen, or copied in a single evening by watching someone else from the sidelines. 9 laws, 1 foundation. You will never run a family, a territory, or a single person standing next to you until you learn to run your own impulses first, inside that one room nobody else has a key to. This is the rule the Commission never wrote down on paper, for one simple reason. Paper can be stolen. Inner discipline cannot be stolen, no matter how hard anyone tries. Mystery is the throne every man who understands this game sits on, not the one who only heard about it secondhand. Silence is a weapon that can't be taken from you, by force or by trick, because it has no shape for anyone to grab onto. Whoever asks surrenders territory. Whoever explains himself surrenders position. Whoever chases surrenders himself, before anyone even had the chance to take it from him. Picture, for a moment, the commission's room late at night, once every decision that mattered has already been said out loud. Cigar smoke settles under the ceiling. The men at the table look at one another and say nothing, because everything that needed saying has already been said, without a single wasted word. Nobody asks anybody for anything. Nobody explains anything twice. And it's that silence, not the money or anything else on the table, that's the real source of power in that room. The last man to leave always leaves on his own time, never rushing, never looking back at the ones who already walked out, never asking permission from the shadow he leaves behind on his way to the door. Power loves silence, and silence always rewards the ones who know how to hold it longer than anyone else. Subscribe to Mafia CODEX. Join the family. We'll see you behind closed doors.